If you,
I just leave it on.
okay.
So they can just,
Okay.
but just a few.
So we don't need a microphone. So, I know for the Berkeley folks, this is the TAM, but, it's the only UC which is not an recorded system. Those of you that are on the recorded system, probably less of an imposition to be here, but I'm very glad that those of you that are here at Berkeley are here. So, as you know, this institute that I represent, CITRIS, Center for Information Technology Research in the Interest of Society, is supported by the state of California to expressly target not just research in information technology, but to make sure that this research lands up in a place that society wants. The stereotype of researchers in the past has been that you develop these really neat, great technologies and you toss it over the wall and you expect that it will change the world. But as all of you know, it takes a lot more than to come up with some cool new technology. You really have to work with stakeholders in society to be able to make a difference. And it makes a huge, huge, huge difference. I think that by some standards, the information technology revolution may be almost like the Industrial Revolution of a long time ago. It has caused, and will continue to cause big societal changes, security, privacy, how we use the web, and so on and so forth. And so it's been important for us to foster an appreciation of this. Till recently, so this institute was set up by then Governor Gray Davis in 2001. And what he made available was $100 million to build a building, which is currently a hole in the ground on Hearst. Construction will start, we hope, on the 19th of May, amazingly, this week also. The Regents have to sign off on it tomorrow, because when they're done complaining about compensation, they'll sign off on it, about building. But the whole premise of this institute is to really think about this, think about information technology and its position in society. Till recently, we focused our efforts almost exclusively in having faculty and students, of course, all rolling together to start centers, and centers like TIER, which was Information Communication Technologies for the Third World, or else for projects which were for the delivery of, for a lab on a chip, for dengue fever detection, all kinds of very specific areas where you think about information technology in a societal system. But we found, and actually Tom, who I'm going to introduce in a second, who realized that in a lot of ways, faculty are not as able to take advantage of all kinds of wonderful other opportunities, partly because all of us, I speak for myself, are so focused on specific things that we've signed up to do. And so I think in a lot of ways, faculty are unable to explore a much broader palette of options. And it is with this in mind that Tom has actually come up with this idea of having a contest whose primary goals, and he has this and he's got a palette of other programs, are really aimed at focusing the creativity of the student body in engaging on a whole bunch of topics which we feel that the faculty may not be as nimble at engaging in because, we're all saddled with things that we have to do.
Serve on committees.
Serve on committees, and frankly, because we may not have the same imagination as the students, if I can sort of let you out in a little secret there at the end. So I'm very, very glad that you participated. I must say the response, and I'm going to let Tom talk about all this, was really quite wonderful. And I look forward to hearing at least a smattering of them. And let me introduce the guy that, two folks that put this all together. Let me first, so Tom Khalil. So Tom's, let me say a few words about Tom. So I have to say, Tom Khalil, who some of you know from the email, I first met Tom, and he was serving as Special Assistant to President Clinton for Science and Technology, and he had a tiny little office in the West, not in the West Wing, but in the old Executive Office building, which is the next building over. And from the very early times, he used to go into that office, and he used to have mountains and mountains of paper, because it's impossible to see him behind these piles of paper, but he kept churning out these documents about how it was that this technology would change the lot of American Indians in some place in Arizona, or else he could put the Library of Congress on a sugar cube. And amazingly, then I started to listen to all this and say, it's harebrained. So then I started hearing these quotes in comments made by President Clinton, and then I realized that he had a pipeline to sort of make these things happen. So in 2001, he moved to Berkeley, and his title now is the Special Assistant to the Berkeley Chancellor for Science and Technology, but of course, he works with all the CITRIS campuses, and he continues to be as inventive. And so the reason I'm telling you all this is because, he's had this commitment from a long, long time about really thinking about the societal context of information technology. And along the way, I'd also like to recognize Yvette Subramanian, who helped run the contest. And so Yvette is our publications and events coordinator, but she's also a scientist in her own right. And Travis Richardson. And just to get all the other acknowledgments out of the way, I'd like to also recognize Aaron, whose handiwork you'll see in a few minutes. And
Great. Thank you, Shankar, and I want to thank you for all the support that you gave for the Big Ideas Initiative. About a little over a year ago, I received a small unrestricted gift from Pierre Omidyar, the founder of eBay, who has the daunting challenge of trying to figure out how he's going to invest the billions of dollars that he has. And I was fortunate enough to get a small grant from him, and I decided to use that to support student-led initiatives on the Berkeley campus, because what I discovered is that the way campus usually works is that faculty will come up with ideas, they'll go out and they'll raise money, and then they'll hire students to do the work. And the experiment I wanted to try is what happened if we gave a small amount of students directly to work on the projects that they're personally excited about. And I've been supporting about 20 of these initiatives, and they have been things like the Berkeley Nanotechnology Club, which Bala is the co-president of, and had a very successful Berkeley Nanotechnology Forum with over 500 attendees. A group of students that you may have seen written about in Saturday's San Francisco Chronicle, who've been working on safe drinking water and sanitation in India, Sri Lanka, and Mexico. And they also put together a prospectus for a multi-million-dollar center in this area. And there's actually a decent chance that by the end of this year, we'll actually be able to get that funded. So I'm very interested in trying to look for additional ways in which we can get students to be more directly involved through clubs, competitions, students suggesting project-oriented courses. There's another group called the Engineers for a Sustainable World, which took a semester to design a course that they would like to see offered. And that course was actually offered this semester on the Berkeley campus. And greater student involvement in shaping the next generation of research, education, and service activities. So a white paper competition is one way to do that. Working with the ASUC and research institutes like CITRIS, we were able to put together a $100,000 competition. CITRIS sponsored a $20,000 competition, which was allowed us to open it up not only to Berkeley students, but students from Santa Cruz and UC Davis, which are partners of ours. But I'm very interested in other ideas for how we can increase the awareness of what CITRIS is trying to do. As Shankar said, unlike a traditional engineering research project, which might just focus on making the underlying technology smaller, faster, and cheaper, CITRIS is really about bringing together people who understand the technology, but who also understand its broader societal implications and how it might be used to improve our quality of life, whether that's connecting the unconnected in the developing world, improving energy efficiency, improving healthcare, improving our ability to respond to natural and man-made disasters, a whole range of societal applications. So the program that we're going to have is that we're going to have the students give a very short overview of their research project, and I'm probably going to mangle your name, so I want to apologize in advance for that. But we'd like to have you just give a 5-minute elevator pitch on your project, and then we'll be announcing the winners. But everyone here is a winner. I should say that we got over 26. We got 26 submissions, and it was very difficult for us to decide which ones to support. And, we're actually going to go to our CITRIS founding corporate members and give them a brief description of your research projects and some of the ones we were not able to initially fund, to see if we can help mobilize some initial resources. So I think that the companies will be very interested in supporting these. So to kick things off, I'd like to have the mitigation of water scarcity team give their presentation, and we've got Alexander Doe and Brian Sosnochik, and was that close? Sosnochik, and Thomas Cullen. So.
Okay, so is the mic on?
Oh, you know, I think that the event is being webcast, so we have to get you to use that level order.
It'll be on the website shortly as well, so even though you're seeing it now.
Yeah, even though it might seem that everybody here can hear you, we need to record you for posterity.
Okay, before we get started, let me just reintroduce the team here. So I'm Alex, Joe, and Thomas and Brian. So that's Thomas with his hand, and Brian, wait. We're 3 mechanical engineering students in the ME department. I actually graduated in December 2005, and now I work on campus at the Center for Environmental Design Research, working on California Energy Commission funded research projects. Okay, so let me just start by giving you something to frame our project and the rest of the presentation. Some of you may be familiar with this. This is a picture of the hydrological cycle. And in our case, we're showing how water connects society, the environment, and agriculture. Water has been pretty much virtualized to most people, meaning you turn a knob and it comes out of a hole in the wall and it goes back into a hole in the wall. But the reality of the situation is that we get our water from somewhere, which is generally the earth. And when we use it, it goes back somewhere. And so you can see the water flows between the society and the environment. Same way with agriculture. Irrigation for agriculture comes from water sources and runs back off into the environment. And this is really important to understand because water isn't just out there on its own. in addition to transporting nutrients and salts, it also transports chemical pollutants between all three of these sectors. So water connects everything. It's important for our state to take this discussion because California is really stressing its freshwater supplies. And even though in a wet year like this we think, oh, we're not going to have any problems with water, we do. We use 46 million acre-feet of freshwater annually. And to sort of give you a sense of reference, that's about 180,000 rose bowls annually that's just used. And for our freshwater, we have two major sources, one of which is the Colorado River. And for the last few years, we've actually been exceeding our budget on usage of the Colorado River by 20%. We know that populations are on the rise, and we know that other states aren't too happy about what we're doing about it. As far as the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, that source of water has heavily been irrigated. And pictured here is the Freant Dam near Fresno, which diverts actually about 95% of the water used here to irrigation. And as a result, you can see the San Joaquin River. This is at Highway 152 heading to Los Baños. It's not much of a river anymore. And generally every year there's about 100 miles of river which is just completely dry. And so we can see the environmental impact. And so it's taken us all this time to see it, but after 60 years, for example, the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation is actually going to reopen the San Joaquin between Fresno and Merced. That's going to take water away from one of the state's most highest producing agricultural regions. And 80% of the state's water is consumed in agriculture. So anything that we can do to reduce the water use in agriculture is going to help all of us. We also know, after seeing the impacts of agriculture to the environment, that our largest industry is not sustainable. Agriculture in California is $32 billion of our state's economy directly accounted for. And it trickles down and creates a huge amount of other economies. And also, it provides 13% of the nation's food supply. There's a lot of stuff that grows here in California that just can't get anywhere else in the country. But it's generally been characterized by industrialized agriculture, which has been disproportionately focused on production and yield, and marked by use of chemicals and pesticides and over-irrigated. And these practices have had huge environmental impacts, such as creating too much salt in the soil and making unusable land, or transporting fertilizers into the water supply and other chemicals that just shouldn't be there. I mean, and to give an example of what happens when you focus too much on production and yield, let's be reminded about the Watsonville situation with the strawberries, and that was a long battle to resolve that. So the problem is, generally, that these agricultural methods are dominated by heuristics, and there's no real source of monitoring tools out in farms to get feedback on what's actually going on with the weather, what's going on with the plants, what's going on with the results. And so this sort of narrow-minded focus on use of chemicals and growing more and more and more can't account for these environmental impacts. So with monitoring, we say that you can optimize irrigation and you can reduce water use. And with that, you'll reduce all the environmental impacts that have been a result of agriculture. And so our solution consists of information technology in 3 levels. The first level is we want to put sensors out in the field. Everyone at Berkeley talks about wireless sensor networks. Here's another application. Let's monitor information. Sensors are really cheap. And let's get information about how the weather changes. All this stuff can be used not only to help the farmers plan their crops, but manage irrigation. And the biggest variable there is evapotranspiration. If we can measure that and how it varies in the field, we can manage irrigation. All that data gets collected to an interface at the farm, which we have all this information, and it becomes transformed through user interface and various models to help the farmers for harvest planning and applying various chemicals to reduce usage here, and then again, optimize irrigation. What we want to do is collect it globally in a database, and that will help stakeholders such as the government and commercial. Commercially, it can provide insurance statistics, new models for analytical analysis of agriculture, and then within the state, it can help with things like water rights. That's going to be a big fight going forward. So finally, just to conclude where we are right now, the 3 of us have been working for the last 1.5 years just building prototypes, and our project's sort of been snowballing. We think, oh, let's build this one thing and talk to some people at Davis and see what they think about it. Next thing you know, we're wrapped up in people talking about UC Discovery grants and industry calling us saying, hey, when can I get this in my vineyard? So this is a big deal. We're going to start studying in vineyards. We're going to put some prototypes out this summer, work with UC Davis to learn more about physiology and the farming, so forth. Continue seeking government and nonprofit support for development, and eventually, after everyone graduates, we'll think about commercialization. And then here's our website. Feel free to take a look there, and we'll be around if you have any other questions. I can take a question. Do I have time for questions now?
Maybe like one or two questions.
Okay.
So, this is actually just a comment. You know, there was Caterpillar came out to visit us at CITRIS last year, and they have a business case for using this to grow tomatoes in Spain. They want to customize, so they want to work on vegetables first rather than crops like rice and wheat, because there's greater profits to be made on vegetables first. So one thing that we can do, CITRIS can do for you is, Gary Baldwin is our executive director. I think that we've been waiting for somebody to go and pay a return visit to these guys. They'd be very interested in your scheme. It's good services. Yeah. Caterpillar, John Deere.
Okay.
Thank you, Travis. He's just up.
Yes.
John Deere. And what was the name in Spanish, Travis?
Oh, God.
So Travis is your man.
Okay.
He can better than
Do you happen to know where they're based at?
in Illinois, in what's the center? No, it's not Peoria, but pretty close. It's either Centralia or Peoria. It's center of Illinois.
Okay.
Have you talked to the people in the Intel Research Lab who've been working on it?
Yeah, I know Intel did a project a few years ago up in British Columbia, monitoring the vineyard. I think the problem is a lot of these projects have been focused on, hey, let's put a network out there and see what kind of data we can collect.
Right.
How good can we get the network working?
Right.
And we're flipping it up and saying, hey, let's look at it from top down.
Great.
Okay?
This is the microphone. It's causing some
Okay, feedback?
Okay, next up is the GIS team. So we have Mayuri, Prasan, and Tahia.
the Levlor is the Levlor. Did you keep the Levlor?
Yeah, the level is right there.
There's one here.
Oh, you need more than one. Ah, yeah, Thomas got a second.
Thank you. Is that okay?
So tell us about yourself.
Okay, I am Mayuri Panditrao, and that's Prashant Jeevan. Tahir is not here because he's actually half the way across the globe. He's in London right now. And on his way to India, we will be working in India this summer. And we start work next Monday. So our project is GIS-based prediction of vector-borne diseases. We'll just tell you a little bit about what we're doing this summer and what our whole plan is, what we've mentioned in the white paper and what we plan to do. So just a little introduction about myself. I'm from the School of Public Health, Prashant is from EECS, and Tahir is from the School of Public Policy. So it's a multidisciplinary team, and we plan to put this together.
You play one.
Do you know what? I don't know something.
Just click. You go to the.
It's not. Thank you. Okay, so just an overview of what we're doing. In disease control, basically we say that prevention is always better than cure, and treating cases is always very, very expensive. And that is the hallmark of public health, actually. And precise targeting is one of the effective ways of saving these costs caused by disease to the economy of any country. So precise targeting can be achieved by using GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems. and it can be used to actually find out what areas are at a high risk of getting disease. In our case, we're going to study malaria. It's a vector-borne disease caused by the female Anopheles mosquito. And in India, the case of malaria, well, it's pretty bad. We have about 1.5 to 2 million cases every year. And these are government numbers, so the actual number of cases are pretty high. And it's very, it's an economic burden to the country because it's 577,000 DALIs, which is disability-adjusted life years, and it's pretty high for India. The preliminary studies have identified there's a lot of literature on this, and we've all come to the conclusion that something needs to be done, and probably GIS is one good tool to find a prevention method for malaria.
So GIS, or Geographic Information Systems, is basically like a database. Geographic Systems, or GIS, is basically a database, but instead of viewing numbers, you're viewing the numbers in terms of maps. And you combine these maps as a figure shows to make decisions. And like any IT system, basically, if you have garbage data in, you'll have garbage data out. So the predictive power of GIS is something we'll validate, but more importantly, we need to get the data from the nationwide, all the local areas, to the national health centers, to the systems that perform this GIS software. For our specific project, we'll be focusing on rainfall, altitude, soil porosity, temperature, and water bodies to predict where the malaria mosquito will be going. It's been used before for disease outbreaks in Africa to predict helminthic or worm-borne disease outbreaks. So this is, like I said, the technology of GIS isn't so new. In fact, it's been around for 30 years. To leverage the IT strengths of India, we will be meeting with private sector IT experts and try to talk about what are the problems with our approach, because these are the experts and we don't think we know the complete solution to our problem. And also to discuss government-private sector collaboration. And like I said, GIS needs a nationwide infrastructure, so there's data from the public health centers, they'll know who's being infected, and they'll know it first. And so to get it to the national health centers in a timely manner is important.
Okay, why UC Berkeley? We all know that UC Berkeley is very diverse, and we have multidisciplinary people on campus, and we want to really use that advantage and use the advantage of strengths in database, in GIS, in remote sensing, in image processing. And what we really want to do is to take all this and to take the research that is happening on campus in infectious diseases and the international network and focus on campus to put this all together and actually build a platform so that we will be able to do more of this kind of work internationally. And
So in summary, we want to validate GIS disease-based prediction with malaria in India and talk to IT experts and government officials to assess the feasibility of our approach and also for collaboration. And we want to create a platform at UC Berkeley because multidisciplinary and international problems are the name of the game at Berkeley, and so we need to do that.
And last but not the least, we really want to thank all our professors, Art Reingold at the School of Public Health, Drew Isaacs and Christy Robbie, and Theogene Singha, who are at House School of Business, and Dr. Aruna Srivastava, who is our main contact in India, and we're going to work very closely with her this summer, and fellow colleagues at the Bridging the Divide conference and the teams for their constructive input. So, thank you.
So we just signed an agreement with the Department of Science and Technology in the ministry in India.
Okay.
Explicitly for projects like yours. And so the way this project is set up is it funds people in India, research institutions in India, that will mirror the work that you do, except when they send visitors to work with you, and when that happens, they're able to send money with those visitors to work with you.
Wow.
And I'll give you, there's a ongoing RFP process.
Okay.
It's actually a decent amount of money a year. And so I'm happy to give you the contacts for, so it's a UCOP, it's all the UCs, but
Right.
certainly CITRIS is a signatory to it. And this actually holds for everybody. If there's such an agreement with, we're gradually going to do it with other places, but India was the first. There's one with China also, but there's no money to it yet. But the India one has money attached to it. So even though it won't be money for you, it's money to spend on the Indian side, except when they come and visit you. So I'm going to give you the contact.
Sure.
Sitting next to me.
So this is like a link to the research institutions in India?
Yeah, so it's a proposal competition, so someone from India has to be a lead to submit a proposal to them. That gets reviewed and then they get funded. So, it's a competition like this.
Thanks for that answer.
I worked on a project with the World Health Organization a number of years ago. The CIO there was the one who set up one of the Helmintic projects with the worldborne diseases.
Right.
His name is Salam Andil. He may be a good resource for you to look at ways of working in India, which oftentimes is a big.
Thank you.
Right, in our research over the semester, we actually found out that WHO has like a kind of a package almost that they try to apply to developing countries.
Right, and it comes complete with equipment and money, so it might be a pretty good person to help you unlock some of that.
Thank you.
So that's Ravi Namana. He used to be at Health Tech Center. So he himself is a resource for
Great.
you, I think.
But Salam Andil was under the International Telemedicine Resource Center that we formed at Davis a number of years ago. So he's,
Any other questions or? Okay, thanks.
Okay, next up, Lily Foster and Sarah Emery.
From UC Santa Cruz, we'll be talking about the concrete garden project.
Thank you. Well, I'm solo today. My partner is out doing a field study. She's going up and down California, doing field research with a professor by the name of Steve Gleesman, who's currently working at UC Santa Cruz to develop agroecology, permaculture. So they're looking at what's going on throughout California. And Sarah was in charge of our PowerPoint, so that explains what one field research does. It gets to the basic points. So the concrete garden project. So, as all of you know, is that good? Yeah. As all of you know, technology is meaningless if it's not connected with the lived realities of the people who are going to be applying that to the context in which they're using these technologies. In the case of Mexico City and the production of agriculture in Mexico City, the technology has historically been applied in a way that has undermined the ability of people within the city center to actually feed themselves and to develop sustainable, small-scale agriculture. So what the Concrete Garden Project works with is that in response to this system, in the creation of what are known as food deserts in urban centers, that is to say, areas in which low-income people have no other option other than high foods that are processed foods, high carbs, and this is something that we as well in the United States are facing in our urban centers. So in response to this, people have developed small-scale community gardens and rooftop gardens. Now, the key disconnect between this model, which has developed out of people's need to survive, and being applied on a structural scale, which would really address the issue of food insecurity, is the fact that these gardens are currently not connected to the institutions which would have the networks and the information resources to disseminate this information. So what the Concrete Garden Project focuses on is working with communities, is working with, this is what the partners for. Thank you. Great, thank you. Is working to support the work of organizations that are currently working within Mexico City, so that they can develop, that the movement can expand. So the way in which the Concrete Garden Project does this is through the creation of an intra-organizational web portal using open source software. Open source software, for those of you that don't know, is software in which the code is accessible. As I said, there's no information or intellectual property rights on that. So that allows organizations that would otherwise not be able to afford a $600, $800 program or web application to be able to do that for free. So the Concrete Garden Project is going to be a project site within Mexico City that does hands-on trainings with partners to develop a web portal that will then serve as the nucleus for collecting information on what is currently happening in Mexico City and the emerging research surrounding the development of urban agroecology. So the center is important because the open exchange of information and ideas between academic institutions, international development institutions, really has not, isn't happening. From everyone that we spoke to that's currently working in Mexico City, you see a huge disconnect between very well-funded institutions and the people who are actually dealing with these issues on a day-to-day basis. So what the project will be is both a site for experimentation and application of urban agroecology methods, and also a place for people who are working, members of environmental organizations, to come learn open source technology and participate in the development of an intra-organizational web, which will act as the center for communication, skills share, resource share. And the reason that this project is so innovative and is so important is that traditionally, the traditional logic behind development is that you go to the rural centers and that develop the rural outlying areas so that people then do not migrate to the urban centers. But there's already so many people that are living in these urban centers that are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis that that what needs to happen is that the logic needs to switch and look at what are people doing now, and what resources are they working with, and work to support that. So the long-term goal of this project is to connect the research and the solutions that people are coming up with in Mexico City, low-income people in Mexico City, environmental organizations in Mexico City, with to be able to collect that in a way that can inform international policy, that can and that can also come in conversation with some of that same research which is going on currently in California in the United States, in places like South Central farmers in LA. So thank you very much. Take it open to questions.
Since both you and your collaborator are graduating this year, I'm wondering if you thought about how you can recruit some UC Santa Cruz students, assuming that this initial phase of the project is successful, to maintain the project after you leave.
That's a great question. I currently am a coordinating fellow for a program at UC Santa Cruz called the Global Information Internship Program. And we have a whole network of UCSC students that is working on open source, database development, and we work with Linux a lot. And so we have every quarter about 40 students, and it's growing every year. And so that's a whole network of students who are learning the cutting-edge technologies and who are also looking at those cutting-edge technologies in light of the emerging crises and looking at it on a global context of what is happening in the developing world, what's happening in the developed world, and how can we work together to create a world that is more sustainable. So that's where the connection would be. So our long-term plan is that this center would serve as a place where students who are at the top of their fields at UC Santa Cruz and other institutions in the UC could come and could learn from people who are working specifically in Mexico City on this and have an exchange of ideas between the two groups.
About web access for poor people in Mexico City itself, what's your sense of what people who need this information having access?
Yeah.
What's your sense of that?
That's a great question. What there is currently is there's a lot of internet cafes in the area. So what that means is that people have had exposure to web technologies. They know how to use things like chat, models like Friendster, and people have used it as a communication tool primarily to communicate, with people all over the world. But the expense is nominal to use an internet cafe. However, there's not the training to use. We all have gotten lost on the internet, I'm sure. Before, if you don't know where a certain valuable information is, it can be very daunting. And so currently there's a huge need for hands-on workshop trainings like the Concrete Garden Project to really streamline that information. And so there is access, but there's a disconnect between the kind of access that people have and the training.
What are social programs like in Mexico City? I've been to Mexico City a few times, and it seems to me that there are social programs that are available for the poor, and maybe this might be a good option to add to a social program's repertoire of things that they have available that they might be able to suggest to individuals that they target. So if you have sort of an urban high-risk person, maybe they can suggest, here's a set of things that you can get, and I'll be a resource to get them for you.
Yeah.
Like progressive is one.
Yeah,
that's the other one.
Yeah, and that's the idea behind this model is that we're not so arrogant or ignorant to assume that we are going to come in as outsiders and say that we have the solutions to these. We do have some tools and we're going to support. So there is definitely a network of services, specifically with urban agroecology. The resources that there are at UNAM, and we're working with several other professors there. But it has been, like I said, those are resources that are somewhat isolated in those institutional centers. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is Joya Cheap. Yes. So she'll be talking about scalable speech technology.
Okay, so I'm actually going to be giving this talk on behalf of Madeline Fauché, who's the main brain behind the project and has done a lot of the work so far. So Madeline Fauché, we are a multidisciplinary Ajay is a linguist. I'm a graduate student in computer science. Jyoti Pal is a graduate student in city and regional planning. And Richard Carlson is a software developer. So the main goals of our project, the first is to determine whether speech technologies can play a role in providing IT access to people who don't currently have it. And the second is to determine the relevant applications for speech technologies in their lives. And what we found so far from our work in the state of Tamil Nadu in southern India is that rural villagers with varying degrees of literacy are able to navigate the dialogue system using Tamil, using command words that are in their local language of Tamil. And what we've also found is that this technology is deemed useful only when it's actually in combination with some relevant content. There's also a correlation when the less education a person has, the more their need is for highly localized content. And when I say localized content, this includes access to bus routes, information about bus routes, or the local health services that are going to be provided and those sorts of things. And this sort of content can only be identified and created by people who are very familiar with the local needs. And so our proposal is to actually create an easy-to-use speech technology toolkit that basically anyone who works, maybe NGO staff members or village workers, can actually create their own speech-driven application. So basically, it's not easy to recognize speech. Automatic speech recognition for continuous, complete sentences is currently available and used in languages like English and French and Japanese. And these languages have a lot of speakers, and also they have corresponding technical and financial resources. But so basically, what the technology for speech recognition is basically like pattern matching. You have a bunch of data that you recorded, you take it, you hand label it, right down to the phoneme level, the speech sound level, and then you can actually extrapolate models out of this data, and you can model each of the speech sounds as well as the grammatical structures and everything. And so you can create these models, and so when you get new input, you just basically want to match it to the models that you've already created. And so you can apply this technology to any language, but the cost for creating the linguistic resources necessary for this is substantial, and it does pose a bottleneck for the ASR development of any new language. And so if we're going to try and create new ASR for new languages like Tamil or other languages in the world, it's going to take a long time to use these traditional approaches. So basically, going back to the very basics of speech recognition, 3 rules. The first is that the more data you have, the better. But if we are looking at a new language, you don't have that much data. So where do we start? What do we do with the little data? The second is that the more the input matches the training data that you have, the better the recognition is going to be. So what we say is, let's just use a few words that we need. Let's create the application for those people, the people in this one specific village. Let's provide that application that's going to give them the exact information that they need. And at the beginning, the speech recognition may be poor, but that's fine. As they use it, we'll record it, and then we'll use that data to add to our training set and create a larger data set so that we can eventually make our speech recognition more robust. And finally, reducing the complexity increases accuracy. So if we have a speech application that just has a few command words, and maybe if it's actually navigated just by words at a time, we can create really substantial applications that have a lot to them, even if we just have a little bit of training data. So we believe that simple speech technology can power an unlimited number of relevant applications, and you can do it fast. So what we've done so far, we have built a software and hardware prototypes. The software prototype is a dialogue system that displays graphics. It also displays Tamil text. It plays recorded audio, and it can be navigated using buttons or text or speech input. And the hardware is it's a computer, mic, and speaker that's actually built into a phone casing. And then we have an Intium-style touchscreen that's built from recycled computer parts. The ASR for this is built on just a little bit of data. There's 100 people saying 30 words 3 times each. And the system actually does record people as they use it, so we can add to the training set later. So what this does is we actually join the two needs. We have the needs of the system, which is to get more training data to get better recognition, and the needs of the user, which is to provide relevant information. And we're doing these simultaneously, as opposed to what's done traditionally. So we have connections with NGO, well-established NGO, who serves parts of Tamil Nadu in India, called the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. And what they do is they provide services through a network of what are called village resource centers. And here's a picture of one in Saraswati. And basically it's like a 7-room building. It has 30 computers, it has internet. It's actually run by people with graduate degrees in computer science and agriculture. And then these resource centers are connected to a number of knowledge centers, village knowledge centers. And here, this particular one serves 10 in the 50-kilometer radius. And these knowledge centers have about 2 computers, a phone, and a printer, and those are completely available to the community to use, and they're run by community members. So how MSSRF has been working is they can actually, if we can provide the speech technology, they can actually provide us with a lot of understanding about the user's needs. What they have is they have registries at their centers. They conduct households door-to-door surveys. They have focus groups and a number of things. And so they're really very familiar with what are the needs of the community members. And they've used that, and they've actually created a number of things for themselves, brochures and pamphlets and websites and those sorts of things. And so we took, for a pilot, we've taken a portion of their website and ported it into this speech application prototype. And so basically how it works is the headings and subheadings become the command words, and then we speak, the Tamil text that's actually on the website is actually spoken, and then within a 10-kilometer radius of the village center, they actually took photographs to provide the illustrations. And so here's actually a picture of some of the MSSRF staff members showing a focus group the new application and getting some feedback on it. And so the proposal here is to actually take these experiences that we've had with the design members, the design team members, and the people at MSSRF, and to use open source software that's actually growing in efforts to produce, to improve resource-scarce speech recognition technology, and to develop a speech technology toolkit. And the way the toolkit would work is that anyone, a speaker of any native language, can actually build, with some computer skills, can build a dialogue system. They can get some data and they can annotate it as necessary and build an application and actually train the recognizer around it. So simple, scalable speech technology promises to extend access to IT for those who can benefit from it in a lot faster ways than traditional methods might. But besides that, we believe that one of the greatest benefits for this application would be that it can help mitigate substantial challenges that are posed by dialect differences in multilingualism or illiteracy, despite the fact that there are limited resources for these situations. So that's all.
So, you know, I was at this HP Labs in Bangalore a couple months ago. So they claim to have a little widget for, and let me say a preamble, they said it wasn't working yet. So, but what is your sense of how far along so HP is similar, I think they're targeting a similar market. What's your sense of where industry is in?
I'm honestly not.
I also saw the HP, the mythical, I haven't seen a prototype of it yet, but when I spoke to them a year earlier, they were doing something very similar to what we were going on, but we haven't, frankly, we haven't been keeping tabs on where both of us are.
So. Is it, so any of you planning to go to India?
Yes.
So I'm happy to make the introduction to the HP Labs Bangalore.
We are in
director.
contact.
You're in touch with them. I think it's worthwhile just keeping up with where the industry is. So.
I think when we saw them, they were going to
Try to do something using the cell phone as a platform for the train station application. I don't know.
It was, yeah, that's right. What do you call this? Handheld, the HP handheld, I forgot what it's called.
PDA? No, the Pocket PC.
Well, it's a tornado.
No, they bought Compact, right?
Yeah, the compact iPad. That's it. That's it. It was based on an iPad. That's it. Thanks.
So in healthcare, there have been a number of groups that have been trying to do this, mostly because in the U.S. market anyway, there's a 1 in 8 chance that any person who comes through the door of a clinic doesn't speak English well enough. It's usually Spanish is the big one, and then it sort of drops off into the other languages. What's interesting is that no one seems to have succeeded, and they've done exactly what you've done, is restricted vocabularies where a nurse would carry around a device that says, this might hurt a little, and then it translates it across, and you get through the session as best as you could. The thing that comes up with this is that, there's a point at which someone has to come and access the device. Have you guys thought about, in a village structure, oftentimes, I'm from many of these areas, actually the state just north of it, and power is rationed, and it oftentimes goes out. And accessing high technology is sort of a social affair. A lot of people put money in to buy something like a cell phone, and they share it amongst each other. Have you thought about sort of that kind of structure and how you might get it out to them once you've developed it a little further?
Well, at this point, I guess we do plan to work with the NGOs that are well established, and I think MSSRF does have, these centers are the sort of places where the community comes together and comes to access the information. So I think that's probably the best way to actually get it out is to go through those NGOs that are already established in such sort of in this area.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, the moment you've all been waiting for. Got that orange envelope here. Okay, so, I'm sorry? Oh yes, all right, so third prize, $2,000, is Eva and Joyjeet. Come on, Eva.
There's separate certificates, by the way, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, we'll have the community look into this.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to go. Yeah. Okay. Let's make sure I got it. Take it on.
Second prize is GIS to predict vector-borne disease outbreaks. Yes, absolutely. All right.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, and we had a tie for first. First prize, $7,500. Sarah Emery and Lily Foster with the Concrete Garden Project.
One more. Oh, sorry.
Okay, anyone left? Yes. Also sharing first prize, Alexander, Brian, and Thomas for their work on mitigation of loss.
Oh wait, that flash now. Battery.
Thank everyone for participating in Yvette. How do they get their money? Okay, so email Yvette.
I will send out a form shortly to all of you, the winners. So.
And as I said, we're also going to send out a description of your projects to some of our CITRIS founding corporate members. We each pledged $1.5 million a year to support CITRIS, and hopefully they will be inspired to provide some additional support for your projects. And also, we wanted, if you have other ideas for how we can get more students involved in CITRIS, both in terms of suggesting research projects and new courses and courses of study and service learning and other things that you think would get students really excited about participating in CITRIS, please let us know. Shankar, any final words of wisdom?
So I think that as was pointed out, your projects are all big ticket projects, and this is just really a drop in the bucket to get started. I think that really one thing we'd like to encourage you to do is, with the help of people here, help us shop your projects to our corporate members. So when they pledge money, it's not like a big check lands up on my doorstep and I get to dig it out. What it means is that we get to schmooze them and say, hey, how about another $50,000 for doing X? So what Tom's going to do and what I'm going to do is, by the way, we already pitched this to we have an industrial advisory board, and they met May 2nd. And we didn't, of course, have the results of the competition in, but Tom pitched this project. The first response from industry was, can we hire every one of the winners? Can we line up to interview them? That was the first comment that they had. The second thing that they said is, we'd love to see the projects. And we heard this from HP, IBM, some of you already at Intel. So I actually would encourage you to work with, certainly Tom's a good candidate, but this guy here, Travis Richardson, sitting right behind you. And I can see, there are people, so I would, I know you guys got an Intel affiliation, but it doesn't preclude you from going to HP. Also Microsoft for the waterborne disease guys. That is the Microsoft Foundation's single biggest area is malaria. Gates Foundation. And then I think that this John Deere, and they came here and they wanted to set up a center for doing intelligent agriculture. It's Designer Tomatoes. They bought this Spanish company, and that's what they were going to do. But you can certainly convince them to be a little broader in their outreach. So I think that really is what we'd like to do. And I think the other thing is, some of you are probably ready to get into Vertex contests and as well as business plan competitions. And there is a pipeline. And I'm sure a lot of you are smiling, so you already know that. And we are happy to help. I want to introduce Ravi Namana. So Ravi Namana is recent to CITRIS, and he works on service sciences and management and engineering, SSME. The notion of how you take technology and all of the things that you did. See, it was not about taking the technologies, but building services around them. People actually don't care about cool new technology, they care about cool new services. And we think that there's something to be, there's an educational niche here. And that's why Ravi's been sitting. By background, he comes from healthcare IT. And that's where he was most recently at the Health Tech Center. But I think he's generally also interested in shopping your proposals, making case studies out of them, also trying to push them with the sponsored members. And he has some other, he has some other candidates also. So certainly in healthcare, he has his own context, but also in here. So we hope to do another contest, right, a year
Yes.
from now, and we'll learn.
We'll learn, we'll make it bigger and better, and we would also encourage your thoughts about how we reach out to more students and get them more directly involved in CITRIS. Thank you very much.
Would you like to get a photo with Shekar and Tom out front?
You want all the winners together?
Maybe out
Not
front?
me, not me. Keep me out of it. Yvette and Tom. Yeah, Yvette, get up there.
I was going to take all the...
so much color.
There you go.
Why don't we just go
Okay,
right out?
Yvette, I'll pose if you pose.
Right here.
Oh, God.